much. I would like to thank Ken, Lisa, and Greta for inviting me to speak here tonight. It is a true honor and a privilege to speak in memory, in commemoration of their mother, Lorraine Nathanson. I know that a talk does not have to last forever in order to be timeless. So in this brief moments that we have together, may the small ideas that I would like to suggest and offer tonight be in Lorraine's merit. May her neshama have an aliyah. May it be for Yisrael a Yeshua. May it be for the Jewish people a saving grace, our learning in Lorraine's memory, in her merit, especially in these trying times as we process recent tragedies. May our learning in her merit also merit all of Klal Yisrael. May it be for Yisrael a Yeshua, and may her memory be for a bracha. Amen. In last week's Parsha, Parshas Toldos, Rivka is very troubled. The pasuk tells us, "Vayisrotzitzu habanim b'kirba," that the children within her, in her womb, were warring, were disturbing her. Vatomer, and she said, "Im kain lama ze anochi." She said, "If this is so, then why am I, or what am I?" The pasuk is not so easy to translate into colloquial English. Vatelech lidrosh et Hashem. And so because she was disturbed because of what was occurring inside of her, she went to seek out answers from God, from Hashem. So we can bring an easy question on the pasuk. Why was she so concerned by feeling movement inside of her? Wouldn't this be cause for joy and for celebration? Anyone who is aware of what it means to be pregnant, or what it means to have a wife who is pregnant, is aware that children kick inside the womb. They can kick outside the womb as well, right? But they can kick inside the womb too. So why was Rivka so distraught that she needed to lecha? Why did she need to go out and be doresh Hashem, and to seek answers from Hashem? And Rashi offers an explanation, quoting from Bereshis Rabbah. Rashi says the following, in explaining Rivka's distress, "Im kain lama ze anochi," if this is true, if there's something going on inside of me, if I'm experiencing these kicks, this kind of battle, or if not a battle, rather, this movement that's very disturbing in her womb, then why am I, or what am I? Rashi, quoting from Bereshis Rabbah, says this is lashon ritza. It's a language of running. Ritz, larutz, ratz, to run. There was a running going on inside of her. Overes al pitchei Torah, whenever she would, and I know some of us are very familiar with this medrash, but it is behooving of us to go over it again, just to examine it in a bit more detail. When she would pass the opening of a place of Torah, a base medrash, in this case, Shem ve'ever, the base medrash of one of the first non-Jewish ethical monotheists, Shem ve'ever, v'Yaakov ratz umafreches letzes. Yaakov would be trying to run to get out of his mother, to go into the base medrash, to learn Torah. Overes al petach avodah zara. On the other hand, if she would go to a place of avodah zara, a place of idol worship, the Esav mifareches letzes. Esav was itching to get out, to go and to worship avodah zara. So we know what the answer is. Rashi brings the medrash, that there were two different people, two different personalities within Rivka. And when Hashem tells her, or the Navi tells her, that there are two nations, in fact, inside of her. She's having twins. Shnei goyim bebitnech. There are two nations in your belly. The Rav Ya'avod Tza'ir, and the numerous one, or the mightier one, will serve the younger one. This somehow calmed her. But again, why would this calm her? If we think about it, the child can just kick whenever the child wants to kick. The fact that there were two personalities in her womb was a source of comfort for Rivka. So why was this answer helpful to her? And there's an interesting perush that I would like to explore by the Tiferet Shlomo. And the Tiferet Shlomo discusses what Rivka really was afraid of and why she was in fact comforted by this answer. The Tiferet Shlomo was a Hasidic Rebbe in Poland in the 17th century, and he says the following ha'ara. He has the following insight. The fact that the Medrash says that there was kicking or there was a desire to get out, she would have contractions of sorts when she would go to these unique places, was what was troubling her. Why? Because she didn't know that she was having twins. She thought that she was having one child. And when there was one child that was very eager to run to the Beis Medrash to learn Torah, she could live with that. That's something that she could feel proud of. If there was one child that was eager to run to do Avodah Zarah, to go to a place of idol worship, she could live with that too. There was a challenge then in the educational approach that she would have with this child. The child then would have a netiya, a inclination that would lean towards Avodah Zarah, and she could live with that. That was something that she would have to work on as a mother, as someone who would educate her child, as someone who was responsible of being moser to the child, of giving over to this child her values and the values of Torah, the values that she espoused. But what frightened her was that there could have been, in one personality, the desire to do both contradictory things. If you have in one individual someone who wants to run to do Torah and mitzvos, and yet on the other hand, someone who wants to run to do Avodah Zarah, that was something that caused her much distress. That was what gave her much fear. And that's why she asked in Cain, if there is this deep internal inconsistency in my child, because she didn't know that she was having twins, she didn't know that she was having two personalities within her, then, lama ze anochi, what is the purpose of living if I'm inconsistent, or if my lineage is inconsistent? I want to make a distinction between inconsistency and hypocrisy. Right? There's a difference between being inconsistent, right, when we are not always behaving how we should, and being hypocritical, where we say we're going to do something when we do the exact opposite. This fear that Rivka had was beyond those distinctions. This was someone who would have been a pathological liar. She was giving birth to someone who truly desired to do Avodah Zarah. Not who would say that they would do Torah and mitzvos and then behind everybody's back worship Avodah Zarah. This person seemed to truly want to run to do evil. This person seemed, for Rivka, to truly want to run to do Torah and mitzvos, which is nonsensical. Lama ze anochi. And that's what troubled Rivka, according to the Tiferet Shlomo, which is why Hashem's answer was so comforting to her. Because there wasn't, in fact, one self-contradictory personality within her, but there were two very different personalities within her. There's a famous Hasidic saying in which when we read the Chumash, the best perush on the Chumash, or the best explanation and insight we have into the Chumash, is our own understanding of reflecting on how we see ourselves in the characters, in the protagonists in Chumash. And Rav Kook was one of those people. And I would like to read for you now from an essay by Rav Kook. And this is from Hamachshava HaYisraelit. So I'm reading to you from Rav Kook's Sefer, Hamachshava HaYisraelit. And Rav Kook says the following. Mi sha'amar alai ki nishmati karua. There's someone who said about me that my soul is torn. Rav Kook had his critics. Anybody who stands up for something, anybody who's a iconoclast or who tends to advance new ideas and who's a very critical thinker or who stands for something strongly. Rav Kook was the first official rabbi in Palestine. So he had his critics, and he's mentioning one of the criticisms that's said about him. Someone said about me that my soul is torn. Yafeh amar. This person is saying well. They're saying something that's actually beautiful. Bivadai hi karua. Of course it is torn. I efshar lanu leta'er b'sichlenu ish she'ein nishmato karua. It's impossible for us to conceive of someone, to conceive in our minds, of someone whose soul is not torn. Rak hadomem hu shalem. Only the inanimate, hadomem, damam, is something that's quiet and silent. Only the inanimate is shalem. Only the inanimate is whole, is at peace. I once had Dr. Pelkovitz, who teaches, he's a professor of psychology at Yeshiva University, and he would teach us pastoral psychology. He said something very off the cuff, but even though it was off the cuff, it stuck with me. He said the following. He said, life without stress, and when you have stress, it means that there's an unfulfilled expectation, there's something that you need to do, there's something that's not shalem, that's not complete. He said, life without stress is death, right? And that really stuck with me. So Rav Kook is saying, Rak hadomei shalem, only the silent, only those who are inanimate are peaceful. But he, as a living soul, all of us, as living beings, we of course are torn. And this is something that's beautiful. Aval ha'adam, but humans who, ba'al she'ifut hafchiyot. We are people with conflicting ambitions. We have internal inconsistencies. There are contradictory feelings within us. At times there are contradictory thoughts within us. Umilchama pnimit tamid b'kirbo. And there is an inner war waging always within us. The chol avodat ha'adam hi, and all the work of man, all of human destiny, our entire work, is for this purpose. Le'ached es hakruim shebenafshenu al yedei ra'ayon klali. Shebegulato uromuto hakol nichlal balidei harmonia. Le'ached, to unify, et hakruim, that which is torn within us, to make it included, nichlal ubalidei, and ascending towards harmonia, towards harmony, towards a kind of consistency. So what Rav Kook is saying is that someone's criticizing me. They're telling me that I say one thing and sometimes I say the next. Someone once said with a good alliteration, what is man, what is woman but a comedy of contradictions? Right, so Rav Kook is agreeing. I have different netios. I have different desires. I have a yetzer tov and I have a yetzer hara. I have different thoughts. One time I think about an idea that I like, and maybe a day later I think about it again and I don't like it so much, or I don't like that idea. The same thing with interpersonal relations. Sometimes I'm having a good relationship with someone, sometimes the relationship isn't so good, and I reevaluate my relationship with that person, or the wisdom that I had engaging in a relationship with that person. We're full of conflicting feelings, and this is something that's beautiful. The very fact that we are karua, that we are torn, provides us with the opportunity to fulfill our destiny of creating harmony out of that tornness, of creating harmony out of those conflicting ideas, those conflicting thoughts and feelings. So according to Rav Kook, he turns this idea that Rivka was so distraught over into a necessary component of the human condition. And indeed, we see it play out amongst the characters of Esav and Yaakov. They themselves, as individuals, are torn as well. Esav doing kibbud av va'ein, Chazal say there was no person like Esav who championed the mitzvah of kibbud av va'ein. He was genuine and he was sincere in certain mitzvot. On the other hand, he was a very good liar. He thought that his father, or he gave the impression to his father that he was interested in learning Torah and mitzvahs. He asked, how does one tithe, how does one give truma on salt? Trying to be very refined, trying to be very scrupulous in the halachot of tithing, to give his father, Yitzchak, the impression that he was studying Torah and that he was indeed engaged. Yaakov, as well, was torn too. How is Yaakov torn? Well, it seems that in last week's Parsha, Yaakov is best characterized as striving to be someone who he's not. He's striving to be Esav. From the very beginning, he swindles the Bechor. He swindles the birthright from Esav. He wears Esav's clothing. He brings the food that Esav would bring to his father. He takes Esav's bracha. He takes Esav's blessing. It seems that Yaakov is also torn, karua, in a way. And there are these inner conflicts within both of them. Nonetheless, Rav Kook turns this into something that has the potential for beauty and the potential for harmony. And in fact, we meditate on this every morning when we daven Shachris. We say the following words right before Kriya Shema. We say, V'yached levavenu la'ahava u'liyira et shemecha. May God unite our hearts to love and fear your name. Right? We don't say v'yached libenu, we say v'yached levavenu. Because in every heart, there's not merely a lev, but there is a levav. And the Gemara interprets that as having two different netios, two different inclinations. There's a Yetzer HaTov, and then there's a Yetzer Hara. And we're asking Hashem that He give us the wisdom and He give us the help to get it together, to bring harmony within ourselves, so that we can harmonize these conflicting thoughts and ideas within ourselves, so that we can serve God with ahava and yira. And what are these two different emotions? They're very conflicting emotions. Ahava, love, spurs us towards something, the object of our love. It draws us close. Yira, which is awe, better translated as awe and not as fear, that pushes us back. It gives us a sense of reticence, a sense of distance from the object of our fear. And yet we ask God nonetheless to unite our hearts. V'yached levavenu le'ahava u'liyira et shemecha. We're asking, in a sense, for what seems to be the impossible. We're asking to resolve contradictory feelings, contradictory netios, ideas, inclinations within ourselves. But I would like to clarify a specific idea. The title of this shiur was about inheriting a Jewish legacy, and then the subtitle was from contradiction to harmony. If you read the title, you might have thought that the conclusion of the shiur would be that we need to reach harmony. Harmony is the ultimate goal, and once we achieve harmony, then we've truly inherited a Jewish legacy. If that was your understanding, I apologize for being disingenuous, because that is not the way that I understood the title of this shiur. The very process of movement from contradiction to harmony, that itself is the Jewish legacy. And with this we can bifurcate two different ideas, which I'll call, and yes, I'm generalizing, so there are different nuances, but just for the purposes of conceptualizing something easier, follow with me. This helps us bifurcate two different philosophies. Greek philosophy on the one hand, and Jewish philosophy on the other hand. Greek philosophy, the ideal aspect, or the ideal notion of perfection in Greek philosophy is best described as a state of being. You are in a state of perfection. If you do A, B, and C, if you do X, Y, and Z, right? If you wash negavasar every morning, you give tzedakah every day, right? This will increase your chances of being a perfect being. It's very hard, but once you achieve this place, then you are domain, then you are silent. You're in this perfect state of perfection, which is antithetical to Jewish philosophy. Jewish philosophy is not about achieving a state of perfection, but Jewish philosophy is about constantly engaging in a state of becoming. Not a state of being, like Greek philosophy idealizes. Rather, we idealize a state of becoming. And many of you might be familiar with the song from Perkei Avos, but Rabbi Tarfon tells us, Lo alecha hamlacha ligmor. It's not on us to finish the work, to finish the task, on the one hand, V'lo ata ben chorin lihivatel mimena, but it's also not on us to stop from creating this kind of harmony, creating this kind of yichud, this unity between two opposing forces. And these forces can manifest themselves within us as they manifested themselves within Rivka. It can be interpersonal strife. It can be theological, philosophical strife that we might have as individuals. They speak to us uniquely, these conflicting forces, and the Jewish approach to them is to accept them and to begin the process of harmonizing. And that's how we live our lives. Not to expect to reach a state of perfection, but rather just to begin to create this process of harmony. There was an insight that Rivka had with regards to giving the blessing or forcing Yitzchak's hand to give the blessing to Yaakov instead of Esav. And the insight can be found in a discrepancy between how Rivka tells over what she heard from Yitzchak to Esav. When Rivka is telling it over to Yaakov, she said, I heard your father, Yitzchak, say the following, right? Yitzchak said, prepare me some food and give it to me, and I'm going to cook it in the way I like it, and I'm going to bless you before I die. The pasuk says, I believe, if there's a Bal Kriya in here, you can correct me, please. Va'avarechecha lifnei moti. I'll bless you before my death. Whereas Rivka places something in her husband's mouth. She puts words in her husband's mouth when she's telling it over to her son Yaakov about what Yitzchak's plans are. She says, give me something to eat, and hunt for me food, and va'avarechecha v'tivarech nafshi lifnei Hashem b'terem moti. And I will bless, my soul will bless you before Hashem, before I die. Which means that Rivka is well aware that although she may be tricking her husband, she's not tricking the Rabbona Shalom. She knows full well what she's doing, and she knows internally that it might be something morally ambiguous, but she knows she's doing it lifnei Hashem. She knows she's doing it before Hashem. And indeed, if Hashem didn't want Yaakov to get this bracha from Yitzchak, why didn't Hashem tell Yitzchak that it was Yaakov? Why didn't Hashem tell Yitzchak, no, this isn't Esav, this is Yaakov? Why didn't Hashem stop her? Rivka was privy to this prophecy of Shnei Goyim bebitnech. She knew the character traits of her children. Yitzchak was not privy to this prophecy. Yitzchak, who was bestowing the blessing, was also not privy to the fact that it wasn't the right person before him to whom he wanted to give this blessing. So it seems that Hashem was on Rivka's side. So what was the blessing that Yitzchak gave to Yaakov? One of the key phrases in that blessing was that Hashem should bless Esav, whom we know was really Yaakov, mital hashamayim umishamnei haaretz, from the dew of the heavens and from the fat of the earth. This is a very physical blessing. It's not a blessing of a brit. It's not a blessing of a covenant, which really focuses on banim, children, and Yerusha, inheritance, inheriting a land. Yitzchak thought that what the blessing he was giving was a very materialistic blessing, and he thought it would complement Esav's strengths. Esav was a very materially oriented man. He was a man of the field. He was a strong person. He was a gibor. He was self-reliant, and Yitzhak felt that the bracha should therefore enhance his strengths. Rivka's insight, on the other hand, was one of harmony. Rivka knew that you can be an ish tam yoshev ba'ohalim, you can be a simple, pure person and tend to sit in the Beit Midrash, and you can be strong physically and materially successful as well. And so she knew that the bracha that Yaakov needed wasn't one that would complement his strengths, but was one that would supplement and complement Yaakov's weaknesses. Yaakov was a person of one netiya, of one inclination, comes along Rivka and says, you know what, you need something which might be incompatible, which would actually help you develop into a fuller person, into a fuller human being. I myself know very well that I do not have the flights of intuition that Albert Einstein has, and I probably won't ever. But I won't put it past me. Comes along Rivka and says, I can still learn calculus and appreciate some of the fundamental principles of mathematics, and it doesn't have to be completely alien to me. If you see yourself as a Baal Chesed, that's your thing, you do Chesed. Comes along Rivka with this complementary harmonic notion and says, maybe you should spend a bit more time in the Beis Medrash learning Gemara a little bit. If you see yourself as an Ish Tam Yoshev Ba'ohalim, that's the kind of person I am. My cup of tea is to sit in the Beis Medrash. Comes along Rivka and says, make sure you get your exercise. Join a gym. Maybe you could be a Baal Chesed a bit more as well. And you should engage in more mitzvot other than just learning. And this was Rivka's insight, where you harmonize two opposing agendas, two opposing ideals. And in conclusion, I just want to quote from the Hesped that was given in Lorraine's memory. And the Hesped says the following, this paragraph says the following. The flame of Yiddishkeit burned strongly within her, within Lorraine. When Mom decided we were going to have a kosher home, we had a kosher home. When she decided she wasn't going to drive on Shabbos, it was a major commitment changing our family lifestyle to be so different from those around us. She gave up all her non-Jewish friends to try to cultivate a Jewish environment. Gradually, Shabbos became Shabbos. Mom leading the way, and Dad following his Eishes Chayil. There are a couple character traits that Lorraine shares with Rivka, a couple character traits that Lorraine is able to actualize, which is related to the wisdom of Rav Kook that we've just learned. She was able to recognize that life's trajectory is a process. It's not about only the end goal. It's not about a state of perfection. But as a Baalat Tshuva, life is an ongoing process. In essence, all of us are Baalei Tshuva. And she wasn't afraid to take that mantle of being a Baal Tshuva up, to make some strong sacrifices, sacrificing friends, family, being able to see her children in order to sacrifice for them such that they could get a Jewish education. These are conflicting values, and sometimes, instead of harmonizing, you have to drop one value and focus more on another to create the better harmony. She recognized that life is a process of resolving contradictions, not merely rejecting something always. A woman of peace who would make shalom at the Shabbos table. She wasn't focused merely on perfection and wasn't disheartened by imperfection. This process, this notion of a true Jewish legacy, of moving from contradiction to harmony, constant movement, is a legacy that truly lives on. And it is this process, this legacy, which will live on, Bezrat Hashem, in her children and her grandchildren, and it is indeed among the greatest gifts that we can give to our children. Thank you very much.